All good for me, Tim. Yep. Ted, sorry, I can hear you in the pod.
Right, that's good. I think everyone can hear me then. Okay. The idea behind tonight is very much just to give an update of where the Scottish market is. Um, Things have changed in Scotland, and I'm going to just touch about why we're doing this via webinar, etc. I used to cover something called the ADI, and some of you on here are implantologists, and we used to all meet up together once a month in Perthshire, and people would do speeches, etc. These kind of things don't happen as much now. So one of the things I'm hoping to try and take ownership for, but trying to promote, is people coming together to talk about what things are important. And I quite often find I look at Scottish Dental Network, we probably all see it on Facebook and LinkedIn, etc. People raising points about classic one, is it okay to work for a corporate, etc., etc. And we need a platform to maybe bring speakers on to address some of these things. And this is what I'm hoping to do taking forwards and promote it so that, maybe we have somebody from a corporate on here, somebody who has worked from a corporate. We actually have somebody on tonight who's owned many practices and actually worked for corporate as well. But that would be for another night and maybe various topics that come up that we can actually introduce people and people can get things off their chest. So tonight was an opening one, but also to bring people up to speed of where the market is in Scotland and what's going on. And the reason I do that is we brought out our Goodwill report, which I'm sure you've all seen. If anyone hasn't seen it yet, let me know and I'll copy you in and get you a copy. But Scotland is a different market from what we see down in England. We have our own wee microcosm of what's going on. And I wanted to discuss that. There's a lot out there at the moment. And I'm going to mention possibly two corporates tonight that we will all know of, which have been very visual in Scotland. One being Clyde Monroe and one being Real Good Dental. There'll be nothing derogatory at all. I'll leave that for you guys to say whatever you like, but I will use them as examples of where the Scottish market is and where it came from. So I'm quickly going to put a slide. I'm going to try and put this up on the screen. And excuse me a second. If anyone has any questions, just speak up at any time, guys. So I'm going to do this initially via PowerPoint. And what we have here is actually a product life cycle. And I'm going to relate this to dentistry in a second. I come from a marketing background. That's what I studied many, many years ago. In fact, over 20 years ago, before I came into dentistry. When you see a product being introduced into the marketplace, now whether this is a new dental practice opening up, etc., all products and all businesses go through this. So you get an introduction and we all try to build our brand preference, we build a brand name, and we want to get more patients in the door. And we increase that market share. Now, whether that be an individual dentist or this could be a corporate coming into the market. And if we look at Clyde Monroe, for example, this was probably them 10 to 15 years ago. They came into the market, they bought, as we all know, Clive Schmilling's practices. Then they tried to build a brand because Clive wasn't using that name at the time, and they tried to increase the market share. So they grew. We saw considerable growth. We were forever hearing they were going to 20 practices, 30 practices. This is the same in any market. We then saw them trying to defend their market share, but maximizing the profit. Now, for anyone who's worked within a corporate, maximizing profit in some of them was they reduce the costs. And by reducing costs, that would involve you using cheaper materials or something that you're not used to. And I hark back to my implant days, using a cheaper implant. We all know that dentists are tactile. They like the feel of certain products. So to tell somebody in my day to stop using the bell and to go and use Implant Direct, the dentist is concerned about that. They like to know what they're doing is going to work. So that's where they try to maximize the profit. But in the past, what they've actually done is disenfranchise the dentists. And what that leads to is a decline. We see it starting to decline down. not being so profitable, and problems arise. And that's going to bring me to the next slide of how that comes about. So if we look at the top right, we see question marks. And for some of you who have practices already or bought practices, it's principle led. You've got maybe one, two, you're going for three surgeries, there's room for expansion, but you're still getting the patients in. You are still learning your skills. So you have a question mark, is my practice going to be successful? And for 9 out of 10 of you, it's absolutely fantastic. So you become a star. And that star suddenly becomes attractive to the corporates because the corporates think, oh, here, hang on. We like that practice. So when is a question mark becoming a star? A corporate will buy this. And they tie the principle in for, at the moment we're looking at 5 years, but back in the day, 3 years. Then it becomes a cash cow because they're taking 50% of that principal's earnings. They're trying to grow the practice and they're just making money off it. So it's fantastic. Unfortunately, after however many years of a tie-in, that principal leaves and the practice becomes a bit of a dog. That's because the principal's left, and as you guys will know, nobody can gross in your practice the way you gross. We've also gone through a phase of being disenfranchised that we mentioned a minute ago about trying to reduce the costs. So morale is low in the practice. We have recruitment issues. And as an example, we saw that happening with one of our Scottish corporates. So what we see is this actual model happening here. We saw back when I probably joined this, probably 9, 10 years ago, the development of the EBITDA model. And that was a different way of valuing practices. And what that did is it meant that it became attractive to sell because you were getting better value and you're getting a true reflection. So we saw the market starting to pick up. It was great. But as things get heat up, the rates were increasing. That was absolutely brilliant. We saw the growth in the market. We saw Clyde Monroe, Real Good Dental. We did see within Scotland other entrants of the likes of Dentex, Portman showing an interest. We saw the life cycle going up. And we reached what we call maturity. Now, what we see with that maturity is the life cycle ends. Well, that is true and what was the original modeling of products. However, what we do see is the exit and entrance of new entrants. And this is where I'm going to come back on the screen now. If I can, that is. I lose my mouse all the time doing this. There we go. Okay, I'm back. So what we've seen there is a case of, and I'll use the examples again, Clyde Monroe and Real Good Dental Company. They were buying practices and they were stars and they were becoming cash cows. But we all know once that principal leaves, we saw there the market starts to dip off again. But these companies all had practices which had gone to become dogs. At a time where we're going through economic crisis, let's be honest, there's no other word for it apart from crisis at this moment in time. So they're having to offload practices which are not performing. In fact, they probably shouldn't have been in a corporate model. They were principal led. So therefore, they're now looking at what do we do? So we're seeing at this exact moment in time, they're actually offloading some of the two, possibly three surgery practices to try and to get the model to fit what they actually make money in at. And that is the 4 to 5 surgery practices, which are led by associates. Associates are happy to work in there, and that's their cash cows. What that does, unfortunately, is it puts quite a lot of practices onto the market. People get scared, but we're also at a case of high interest rates. And we also have, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, we have the young team who are not predisposed to buying practices. When I was younger, and a lot of my friends out there who are dentists, they qualified, They worked in a dental practice and they either got a partnership or they would get their own practice. Nowadays, dentists are quite happy to remain as associates. So what we're seeing is a bit of a stagnation in the market in general for many, many reasons. Economic, for one. The corporates, they seem to be failing. Now, actually, what I have to say in their defense, if you're in a core practice, 4 or 5 surgery practice, I'll use Clyde Monroe as an example, very good academy there. Fantastic. They're trying to support staff. But unfortunately, we're seeing that it's not throughout the whole organization. And the same with Real Good Dental Company, who went through the process of also buying a lot of practices that were not an ideal fit. And they're now trying to move them on. In fact, I would envisage, and this is just some conversations in the marketplace, that we'll see very little purchasing going on in Scotland within for the Real Good Dental Company. They will keep on the good practices, hive off the smaller ones, and probably focus on the kind of M4 area down in England, because that's where they're guaranteed cash cows and to make their money and to grow. So that then brings me to the point, where does that leave Scotland? Where's the future? And this is what nobody knows the answers. But when we look at product life cycles across the market of other products, if we look at the IT market, we look at IBM and what happened to IBM and now broken up, partially Chinese, etc. I think if we look at the Scottish market, a lot of people at the moment are treating with trepidation. I have to say, from my side, from where I'm sitting, I'm actually seeing a lot of positives. Now, as a broker, yes, you could comment, Ted, you have to say that. However, I'm not stupid. I know most of the people on here well. I see positives because as a product life cycle, what we're going to see is new entrants who are looking at these early stage products which can become stars, and a new principal comes in because the young team over the next year to 2 years are going to see their percentages driven down as we see the Holyrood bringing in more dentists to the market. Now, that's not going to happen in 6 months or a year. So my projections are a bit longer and I'll come to them. So we are going to see some of the young team opening up practices. I already know of quite a few who are endeavouring to get squats up and running. Something that for the last 4 or 5 years, people were not doing. But people are now looking for finance for squats, contacting me for best areas to do this. So that's why I think there's positives. The other side being is we have the mini corporates. So that's the 3 to 5, up to 10 are actually growing. They're seeing opportunities because when we see Clyde Monroe, Real Good Dental, selling off some of their practices, there's an opportunity. Everywhere there's a crisis, there's an opportunity. So we see them starting to pick some of these up. They can integrate them into a practice they already have, or they could build it by putting it into a new premises. I'm also in touch with, as you're aware, Portman and Dentex, who were Portman, etc. All of these players. But I'm also in touch with some of the new people. We're also seeing American money coming into the market who are looking at and are looking at Scotland, also looking at England, but Scotland because they can buy cheaper EBITDA. Our multiples were for a while, for a large practice, we were hitting 7.5. We're probably now down more about 5.5, in all honesty. Now, it's case specific, and that's on a corporate model. Yes, Christian, sorry. Sorry, I thought we had a question there. So,
Oh, sorry.
what we're seeing happening is new entrants come into the market, and that was where, I'm just going to put it back up on the screen again very briefly, this stage here of the life cycle extension. And that is where the new entrants come into the market and we see the whole process starting again. So that's why I'm quite positive. And don't get me wrong, I sit here and think I am not where we were when we finished COVID. When we finished COVID, it was manic, it was mad, we were selling everything, it was great. We're still busy, we're still moving practices, we're still valuing practices, but we're not at that stage and we're not getting the same values we were. But we are seeing what I said, this life cycle expansion. In my honest opinion, I think we're looking at 3 to 5 years. And I'm going to ask Michael Kelly in a second to step in and actually discuss his opinion on that regarding other markets. Because not only does he work extensively in the dental market, he works across other markets. And I would love to know if Michael is also seeing the same across the marketplace. But I do see a lot of positives in that. I sound like a politician, don't I? A lot of positives in that we are going forwards. Have we bottomed out? Yeah, I think we possibly have, but it's going to take a while.
Ted, can,
Yes,
can,
Michael.
can I just give you my thought on that?
Yes, that would be great. If you jump in now, Michael.
Because you're right. I do work across the sectors. There's two things that are, I think, bringing about a bit more activity, including the dental sector. It's clearly interest rates are coming down
Yeah,
slowly. Um, and well, probably a few things. Interest rates are coming down slowly. Inflation is under control. So there's a bit of kind of certainty. There's more certainty in the economy, albeit it's kind of the growth in the economy is slow, but there's a bit of certainty there. And the other thing is just sellers have recalibrated their expectations.
yeah.
That's really what's driving it. It's the kind of nexus between the interest rates coming down and seller expectations falling at the same time. Unfortunately for them, if you're on the sales side, that's unfortunate, but that's the reality of it. Is the prices are coming down.
100% agree, Michael. And that's why it's been quite challenging for the likes of myself, where we have put valuations, and you'll see this across the board, where you've told people maybe over a year ago their practice, and I'm making up figures, their practice was worth £1 million, and the practice is now not worth £1 million. It's just a re-evaluation across the market, and obviously, as you're saying, we're seeing that across all markets, not just dentistry.
Yep. Yeah. Ted, that's it. That's completely agree. I mean, there'll be some anomalies in our sectors which are different, but just in a kind of as a general comment, yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's so. And what we also see is the private equity companies, they all come in at different times. We see the early adopters of the market who have been in dentistry, they've moved on already. And then we see we're probably in our third generation of private equity investors, and it keeps going. The ones who were in dentistry, say 15, 20 years ago, they moved into renewables. And to be fair, they've moved on from renewables. They're probably in AI now, which everybody's talking about. That's just the state of the market. And that's another example of product life cycles. So I'm not going to bore you for too long. Hopefully that brings you up to date. What I would like to do now is ask for your comments, any questions, and also some feedback from you of from where you're sitting. Because I was at the dentistry show at the weekend there, and I was also hearing a lot of dentists saying that for them, things have slowed down a bit as well. And I'd be interested to get some feedback on that as well. So please, any questions, please jump in. Chris,
Hello.
good evening. You have something to say or to add?
Not really. I'm just kind of coming in just to kind of get an idea where the market is. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Um, Certainly, I've heard the really good dental from other kind of sources that they're looking to kind of offload a fair bit, and their equity owners are looking to kind of maximize their profits, from what I can tell.
Yeah. That's exactly right, and that's going to happen. The big guys are all about risk. Everything's about risk for them now and minimizing risk. So they're all buying. And what they say to me is, find me something in the M8 corridor, which is Scotland's M4 corridor.
Yeah.
Whereas before they were, and with one gentleman on here who might want to comment, who is far up north. And the corporates in the day would say, yeah, we'll take that practice on. We have no issue with location at all. That now is not happening as such. They're now playing it very careful. But that's where we need the new entrants who will say, do you know what? I'm in this for the long game and I'm happy to do that. That's where we're going to see it. Christian, John, anything to add?
I think so. I mean, how's you're saying that there's very few associates looking to buy practices at this point in time? Is that the gist of it? Certainly, from my point of view, that the associates seem to be a lot happier to stay as associate.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. And I think that comes down to risk factors again. They're sitting thinking I could take on a lot of debt. What Michael said there is really important is interest rates are coming down, etc. And when interest rates come down, and there's a crossover point, there is a crossover point where when interest rates come down enough and they can buy a practice and they're making more money than they would as an associate, that is when we start to see that shift happening. At the moment, with interest rates being high, it's actually probably more cost effective for some, a good grosser, to remain as an associate. And you think, well, I understand that. Is at what point does that crossover happen? And that's why I think we need probably another year of stability, but we also need another year of associates working as associates and seeing the difference and then saying, actually, do you know what? I'm fed up with this and moving on. At the moment, they're quite happy. But I do think that's going to change at some point. People still are out there saying corporates own, 50% of the market, etc. They're not. There's still a minority, shareholding in the market, but it's an important one and it is going to grow. But I do think the both will live together. So yeah, we're in for interesting times. I think better times, but it's interesting, and we are still going to struggle to get associates as well because we're still not getting them all coming through.
Thank you.
Okay. John, Christian, anything at all?
No, I really have no specific questions, to be honest. I just want to see where the market is at, like a quick update, that's all.
That's good, John. It's good to hear from you.
Hi, Ted.
Hi there.
Ted, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Hi, Ted. I think you might have been referring to me when you were talking about up north and the corporates.
Well, yeah, two of you are up north, but you, as we know, John, you're very far north.
Yeah, I'm not far enough.
Yeah,
Anyway,
you've had experience on both
my
sides.
contribution to the debate, Ted, is very simple. Corporates without a soul have absolutely no chance whatsoever. Dentists, young dentists, any dentists, my age, it doesn't matter. If you are not dealing with colleagues who understand what an MB2 is, you're wasting your time. No dentist can ever encourage another dentist to produce work that they're not happy producing. So the corporate model is 100% doomed. The only way a man with, or a woman, obviously, with several practices can succeed is if they have the respect of younger colleagues. That's it.
I agree. As you know, John, I agree wholeheartedly with you. My only argument to that is, and I know we could argue about this all night, would be, and I'm going to counter my own argument in a minute with another argument, is the veterinary market. And what I'll say to you is that's what was said with the veterinary market years ago, but it still went ahead and it did become corporate.
Okay, can I just stop you right there?
Yes, of course, John.
You can compare the veterinary market and the optical market. They both are dealing with dumb animals, meaning that vets treat patients who can't speak back. Opticians are not intimate. They're simply at a distance. Dentistry is intimate. So dentistry is 100% different. You know what? I put my money into vet. I put my money into optical. I would not put my money into dentistry because Mrs. Bloggs flies up from Switzerland to London to come back to see me because I'm the only dentist she wants to see.
Yeah.
That is not the case in veterinary, and it is not the case. It's a totally different game, Ted. And everybody on this webinar tonight understands 100% what I'm saying. Dentistry cannot be scaled unless you trust who you're dealing with. That's it.
So, John, I totally agree, as you know. And what I will say is, to continue the veterinary argument is, if you drive down your high street now, all we see, because as you know, you've seen the dog I have these days, is vets appearing left, right, and centre, which are now all individuals and not part of corporates.
Yeah.
So they're reappearing. So they've gone the full circle. And I agree
And
with you.
dentistry will go the same way.
100%, and that's what I'm saying. But I think it will be an accelerated process because of exactly what you've just said there. The accelerated process being is because humans have a voice to speak where the animals didn't.
Correct.
And that's
Ted,
100%. So that's where I was going to, as I said, counter my own argument. We're going down the veterinary route, but we will come back round. And a lot of that trust, etc., has been lost. But I do think that can come back. And I'll be honest with you, John. I had a wee chat with Michael via email earlier today. And that is one of the reasons why I do believe running webinars, and I know we're not oversubscribed tonight, is to start this process of people talking and doing things like this. And that's why I would love at some point, if we're doing one about the pros and cons for corporate, Sean, maybe you'd like to join us as a contributor. But I totally agree, and that's what we need to do.
I think you know, Ted, that I am quite unique in the sense that I sold 3 of my practices to a corporate and I bought them back. And there's not many people have done that. And I've even bought another one from the same corporate. And as you quite rightly qualified earlier, we're not in the business of slanging or slagging anybody. But I will say that I'm glad I'm on this side of the deal rather than the other side of the deal. And had I been on the other side of the deal, I would have dealt very differently because I, as you know, having had 27 practices under my belt, I know how dentistry works because dentistry only works with trust of your colleagues and the people. It is not, dentistry is not a business, it is a profession. Don't ever forget that, anybody who's on this webinar. It's not a business, it's a profession.
So that John takes me back to where I want to go to with the webinars, is to actually bring these professional people back together and actually talking, because I do myself, I'm not, you know me, John, I'm not a dentist. I've been in it for a long time. We met many years ago.
I've known you for 30 years, Ted.
That's exactly right. But it does pain me when I look at the some of these comments on Facebook, etc., where people cannot get answers because people are not talking. Now, don't get me wrong, I have to sell dental practice. That's my job. But if the individuals at the moment don't have the confidence or are not getting any mentorship, they're not likely to buy a practice. Whereas years ago, you would have an associate would want to buy a practice and you might be a bit disappointed at losing an associate, but you'd think natural progression. That doesn't exist at the moment because a corporate does not want you to go anywhere.
Okay.
And that's why I would like to do more of these, John.
That's another debate, and I'm happy to be involved with that. I don't know if you know, Ted. Well, I think you do know, but I am the chair of the Highland LDC, and I think we have 100 and something practices in our domain, and I do a lot of mentoring for a lot of colleagues. Dentistry is a profession which, unfortunately, is now a business. My eldest son, Michael, is a doctor. He's an emergency medicine doctor. He says to me, Dad, I don't know how you do it because when I work, I have a patient comes in, it doesn't matter what's wrong with them. I can commission whatever resource I need, be it PET scan, CBCT scan, screening, It doesn't matter. There's 1,000 tests that you can do. And nobody ever mentions the word, by the way, which is the American model, that's going to cost you another $4,000. Because in the UK, all NHS is free, apart from dentistry, which is one of the most important parts of the human body that I can envisage. Your mouth, you speak with it, you talk with it, you monitor with it, you eat with it, you beckon with it. It is an obscenity that NHS dentistry is not paid properly. So we don't have 46,000 dentists in the UK who are on the GDC register paid so well that they don't even consider wanting to go outside that mask. And yet, and this is me really drifting now.
Don't worry.
No, I'm going to drift a bit. Yet we can spend 5% on GDP, which is literally, $1.5 trillion or £1 trillion on defense, meaning making bombs. Okay, I'm not going to get political. What I'm saying to you is that dentistry should be as cheap as chips, and it should be part of the NHS, but it isn't. And because it isn't, we have got to make our best do at making a living for our families. Because I only go to work to make a living. I don't go to work to be a billionaire. I go to work to make a living for my family, to support my family, to support my team. I have got girls and boys, mainly girls, who've worked for me for 30 years. That's a lifetime. And it's not one, it's not two, it's not three, it's 5. So I must be doing something right. So my point is, dentistry is being turned into a commodity when it should be a profession. That's all I want to say. I'll happily do a webinar or a podcast or something another time with you, Ted. But I hope anyone who's listening realizes that I have something to say about this.
Well, John, that's exactly where I think we should be going. And you would have been one of the top of my list, as I think you're probably aware anyway, to actually take it forward and have that discussion, because I think that's what needed. And, ultimately, at the end of the day, would it result in practice sales for me? Yes, it would. That's great, fantastic. But that's a byproduct of what I'm actually intending to try and drive forward. So I would maybe we could catch up with that and have a discussion about the next one and where we take that to. That would be ideal. And if anyone else has any comments regarding that and where they feel they could contribute to that, I'd be more than happy to listen to it. Michael, have you something to say there? Sorry.
I would just say I enjoyed that, John. I didn't expect the defence budget to come up in this webinar when you said you were drifting. So I appreciate that. That was good.
Well, Michael, the reality is the defence budget is simply another part of our entire GDP.
Of course.
I mean, can you imagine spending that defence budget? We would be doing implants for every single patient who had a missing upper right one.
Yeah. No, and you're right. The carving out of dental from the overall healthcare, yeah, it's incredible actually. I'm a lawyer obviously, but listening to you say that, I think you're exactly right. I mean, it's incredible that's been carved out in that way.
I'm 100% right on that, Michael. The truth is the truth is that dentists are the most guilty of all people I've ever known. So in 1989, when I was a student, I went to my dean in Cork and I said, would you mind if I tried to arrange an exchange with a dental school in France? And he laughed at me and he said, Barry, are you out of your head? Go ahead. So I did. And I wrote to every dental school in France. And the dental school in Rennes wrote back and said, we would love to do an exchange. So I brought 21 of my colleagues to Rennes and they treated us like kings. And I ended up doing a 1-year exchange. Sorry, that's not true. A 1-month exchange in Rennes. My point is that I began to understand the French dental culture. And you know what the French dental culture is? They work on their own. They don't have nurses. They don't need them. There is no GD French C. They just trust that their professionals do their work, which they do in the main. And as a result of that, I learned a lot more about France. And when the French fishermen are threatened, they throw all of the tractors into the sea. If we did not accept what is thrown at us by our NHS paymasters or our government paymasters, you know what? There is nobody in the UK who is not a dentist who can remove an upper left 7. There is nobody in the UK who is not a dentist who can do an endo in an upper right 4. In other words, we're the only people who can do this job. And yet we kowtow to those who have no relationship with us and tell us what we should pay for that service. It's absurd. If we joined forces and said, ain't going to do that, you know, we're the most powerful negotiating team on earth for dentistry, and we don't negotiate at all. And I have to say, I have the height of respect for my colleague, and I would call him a friend, Eddie Crouch. Eddie knows me very well, and Eddie is the head of the BDA all over the UK, although he's based in Birmingham. Although I have the height of respect for Eddie, I would like to say to Eddie, stop talking to these people.
Yeah.
Start telling them what to do because we're too nice.
Yeah. The VDA is useless when it comes to negotiation.
Oh no,
Correct.
they're worse than useless. They actually have brought us back the way. You know, nobody will put me at the head of the BDA because you know what, the government wouldn't like it.
Yeah, that's the person you need, not people that they like.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, a bit off topic, and I'm happy with that because that's what this is going to be about going forward. I totally agree with you, John. For a body that has so much power, they wield it never.
Well, actually, they wield it never. That's a very good point. And I
Yeah.
wonder why. I mean, you have to ask yourself why.
Well, it's the only profession, and Michael, you could maybe argue with the lawyer side, but I think this is true. It's the only profession where with the GDC you are guilty until proven innocent. That says
Well,
a lot.
I can go one better than that because I've been in practice now for 38 years. I never ever had a single complaint until 7 years ago. I then had 3 in a row, which took me 3 years to go through the GDC to finally have a no case to answer, no case to answer, no case to answer, which they were absurd even at the time. And I have my 4th complaint, and I mean, I'm not alone now. Everybody knows colleagues who are good guys who have complaints. Anyway, I have one now. I have one now that started after COVID from a lovely girl who complained that she was really frustrated that her treatment was taking so long. Well, boo-hoo. I mean, you know what? There were people dying on cardiothoracic surgeons' waiting lists for bypasses. All I was doing was treating 7,000 patients in my 2 practices with a colleague who passed away suddenly, a young dentist who had agreed to go and do a PhD, and I was on my own, and I was seeing up to 15 patients extra per day with pain. I can demonstrate that. Anyway, I went to the GDC. Her complaint was that it was taking too long. And 2.5 years later, right, the GDC, 2.5 years later, the GDC produced an expert witness who went down the rabbit hole of looking at everything else in her case, nothing to do with her complaint. And finally, the GDC expert said there is no conceivable way that the registrant will have his fitness to practice impaired to be found proven. In other words, case not proven. Guess what happened? And this is really fun. The GDC wrote back to me and said, we are not happy with our expert witnesses report, and we are going to request a different expert witness. And I wrote back and I said, so your first expert witness couldn't damn me enough, and now you're going to try to find some other punter who will damn me more. And of course, I haven't heard a word. And look, my defense union are lovely. They're the MDDUS. I highly respect them. I said, I want a complaint here. I want to bring these beep, 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 beeps down. And he rightly advised me, he said, look, just hold fire. So that's the toxicity of the current GDC. That would not happen in any other jurisdiction. In Ireland, and I am Irish, as you can determine, in Ireland, if we have a problem with a colleague who is offside, we send a couple of grey-haired guys like me around and says, now, John, what's the crack here? What is going on? We hear that things aren't well. You're having a bit of a problem at home. You're maybe drinking a bit too much, or da 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 da. How can we help you? Not
As
how
they
can we.
should.
Not how can we destroy you?
Yes.
And that's a major issue with my belief in the GDC just now. So anyway, we have deviated way off topic. You better be chairman. If anyone wants to discuss this further, I'm happy to. But Ted, you better bring this back in line.
Do you know, John, I actually appreciate you what you're saying, what you said, because what I'm saying is there's a lot of positivity, and we should be going forwards. But it's not just about me sitting saying it's positive selling dental practices. I think the positivity message should be going out to dentistry in general. So I'm not wanting to do all these webinars are not going to be about me trying to sell a dental practice. It's about bringing people from your LDC group, etc., together on here. And yes, somebody may buy a dental practice because I've hosted an event and our name's on it. But it's about bringing the positivity across the board in dentistry, and hearing stories like yours there about GDC, but also knowing that one, yes, you can go out and talk, and there are people who can go out there. And I've heard that story from somebody you'll know well, who used to do the exact same, and that was Bobby Broadfoot. Used to go into somebody's practice and say, right, what's the problem here? Let's get it sorted. That's positivity. And I think that is where I want to go with this. So actually, we have done a kind of circle round, and I appreciate you saying that, John, so thank you.
Well, Bobby Broadfoot would be one of the people that I would 100% say was responsible for me being where I am, because Bobby was a great mentor to me. I did VT training. He came to my practice and he said to me, you know what, JB, you may be in the middle of nowhere, but you're lovely, lovely practice, and I love what you do. So I have the highest respect for Bobby. Now, I have no idea who else is on this webinar.
Okay.
Not a lot of people are engaging, but my point is that it's not about buying and selling practices. We have a natural progression.
Exactly.
We age. Somebody needs to take over. I've just sold my Inverness practice to two of my associates, Archie McClellan and Diane Inkster. And you know what? I sold it to them for what I would consider to be far less than the figures that I see bandied about, simply because they're young people. I really respect them. I like them. I enjoy working with them. And I am still going down there. I spent Monday and Tuesday there, helping them, mentoring them. It's not all about money. If you do the work well, the money comes. That's the reality.
Yeah.
And that's something that the corporates have no idea about. They think dentistry is a business, and the difference between a business and a profession is where you do your best when when you don't even know if somebody's looking. If
The
you
money
can,
will come.
the
Yeah.
money will come. If you do your job well, you will make a very good living. And a time comes, and not everybody knows where to buy, and that's where you come in, Ted. And
Yeah, exactly.
you match people. So anyway, I think that we've probably spent enough time tonight.
That's okay.
I'm happy
Chris,
to be involved anytime, Ted.
thank you. Chris, you had a comment to make there.
No, I was just, I agree with John there, just in terms of, you get associates that come in and just they're looking at the bottom line figures. And, the main thing is if you just concentrate on doing your job and do it well, then the money will come. It doesn't,
100%.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Now, we are running out of time, guys, so what I'd like to do is draw it to a close. You all know where I am. If you need any, advice, etc., I will contact you regarding a future one, which I'm very keen to do something regarding associates, corporates, the pros and the cons. So, John, I'll maybe tap into you for that. And Michael is also here as well. Should anyone need any legal assistance, Michael, I've known Michael for a long time now and has always been very helpful. So I'd just like to say thank you all for attending tonight, and I'll hopefully speak to you all soon.